One of the main differences between the two campaigns which Antichrist will launch against the triple coalition of the South will be that while the second campaign will be characterized by the decisive intervention of an overwhelmingly superior navy, this first expedition will apparently consist, as intimated previously, entirely of a ground invasion. Several reasons may be adduced for this. First, much of what still remains semi-independent in the world will still be in the process of being consolidated under Antichrist's control at this time. The concentration of the Southern Hemisphere's population and power on the littoral of the world's great oceans will require a significant application of naval power to secure, and it is likely that the combined navies and amphibious forces of Babylon and revived Rome will be too preoccupied in this task to have much of an impact in this first campaign. Secondly, it is also likely, given the essential geography of revived Rome versus the Southern Alliance, that Antichrist will need two campaigns to complete the task, and that this first, primarily ground operation, will have as its strategic objective an initial degradation of the South's armed forces and the seizure of key terrain for the establishment of bases and staging of resources that will ultimately be necessary to deliver a knockout blow in the follow-on campaign. Additionally, the conduct of the first campaign as an entirely overland operation, proceeding from north to south, will also serve to create an opportunity for strategic surprise by making the massive naval operations of the second campaign a less anticipated development. Nevertheless, he, that is the king of the south, will not be able to stand against the king of the north, for they, that is the three subordinate southern kings, shall devise plots against the king of the south. For those who eat his choice food, that is his inner circle, will break him, and this is why his force will flood away, and many will fall slain. And though these two kings, that is Antichrist and the Mahdi, set their hearts on evil and speak lies at the same table, that is a peace conference, it will not prosper, for there will yet be an end to the period of the Great Tribulation. Daniel 11:25-27. All tactical considerations aside, these verses clearly indicate that the primary reason for the failure of the South and the victory of the North in this first confrontation will be the treachery against the Southern leader, or Mahdi, on the part of Antichrist's agents, that is, the three subordinate kings of the South who are themselves part of the 10 horns. All this suggests that the South's forces will actually be significantly stronger than Antichrist's numerically inferior, if perhaps somewhat technologically superior, army, and that, had the battle taken place on a level playing field, the result would have been much different. We are not told the specifics of how this inner circle of the three kings will undermine the Mahdi's hopes in this first encounter, but it is not difficult to guess. Through a combination of bad advice, that is, encouraging the decisive action too far north, thus making the logistical situation easier for the beast and more difficult for the South, undermining morale, spreading false rumors, keeping the beast informed of all the Mahdi's movements and plans, and deliberately failing to carry out necessary operations with appropriate vigor, these three will be in a position to bestow upon the beast a decisive advantage. It should be noted at this point that as a result of his strategic pullback and the peace treaty with the South, there will therefore probably be no large-scale movement of the beast's troops into the state of Israel at this time. That development will apparently await the conclusion of the second campaign, when Antichrist will shift his world headquarters to Jerusalem. Compare Daniel 11:41. As the relatively vulnerable casus belli, we may theorize that Israel's primary role during this first campaign will merely be to defend herself, and possibly also to act as a blocking force against the direct intervention by the forces of the alliance's southernmost kingdom, that is, Egypt and its coalition partners. This does not mean, however, that the beast will not take advantage of this opportunity to begin to apply the screws to Israel, while he still has significant forces in the vicinity. The political state of affairs within the State of Israel at this time is likely to be extraordinarily tense. On the one hand, the secular Jewish majority will have placed a very strong leader in power, one of the 10 kings, in fact. On the other hand, however, the ministry of Moses and Elijah, and the worldwide evangelism of the 144,000 directed by them, will be reaching its zenith at this point, producing a sizable minority of believers. The defeat of the Southern Alliance will be a turn of events, which will leave even many of the most ardent supporters of the worthless shepherd, that is, the Israeli premier, somewhat less enthusiastic about the beast and his empire, while at the same time, Antichrist will also feel less constrained in regard to his dealings with Israel. For with the South set up for defeat, the entire world will be only one step away from falling completely into his hands, and the need for a great cause, that is, the crusade to protect Israel, will soon be obsolete. At this point, then, the beast will feel secure enough to take preliminary steps towards Israel, which will leave objective observers in little doubt about his ultimate designs for that state and for the Jewish people. For while he had based his worldwide political campaign upon the need to protect Israel, in reality, it had always been his father Satan's plan to destroy her. Now as he, that is Antichrist, returns to his own land with great booty, his heart will be set against the Holy Covenant, so that he will take action against it and then return to his own land. Daniel 11:28. The words Holy Covenant used here refer both to the administration of God's grace and truth to the Jewish people, through the restoration ministry of Moses and Elijah and the 144,000, and to the heart and hand response of those in Israel who accept the message. All of Antichrist's long-distance efforts to hinder the ministry itself will prove unsuccessful at this time, as the Lord will provide the two witnesses with ample ability to ward off any direct threats, Revelation 11:5 and 6. But this verse does represent the beginning of the persecution that will break forth with a vengeance after the conclusion of the second campaign. We can only imagine what sort of intimidating measures the beast and the worthless shepherd will impose upon true believers at this time, though they will likely include activities of the sort intimated by Daniel 8:10 and 8:23 through 25, but one can safely assume that particular pressure will be brought to bear upon all those who have not openly accepted the message of salvation. Such a strategy has the advantage of creating a widening rift between the people who know their God and those who, while they may have a varying degree of emotional attachment to the restored ritual of the temple, will be unwilling to abandon their worldly security for a genuine relationship with Jesus Christ. Still, the reduction in personal freedoms and alteration or restriction of traditional rituals, which the actions of Antichrist referred to here in Daniel 11:28, will no doubt entail, especially coming at a time when the threat from the south has now been reduced, will not be well received by many in Israel, and will have repercussions, as we shall see. The second campaign against the south. For the better part of this study, we have been following Daniel chapter 11 as our chronological guide to the secular events of the tribulation's first half, and it will be helpful to repeat at this point the summary of the pertinent part of that chapter. Verse 21. Synopsis of the beast's career, part 1. His rise to power and his methodology in seizing control of Mystery Babylon. Verse 22. Synopsis of the beast's career, part 2. Mobilization for and destruction at Armageddon. Identification of Antichrist as the prophesied Prince of the Covenant. Verse 23. Return to the chronological order by reprising Antichrist's methods in gaining control of Mystery Babylon. Verse 24. Seizure of the 7 kingdoms, revived Rome, consolidation of power and preparations for attacking the Southern Alliance. Verses 25 through 28. The first campaign against the 3 kingdoms, the Southern Alliance. Verses 29 and 30. The second campaign against the South. Verses 30 through 35. The attempted assassination of Antichrist, his putative resuscitation, and his resultant persecution of Israel. Verses 36 through 39. The reign of Antichrist during the Great Tribulation. Verses 40 through 43. Reprise of Antichrist's victory over the Southern Alliance during the Tribulation's first half, giving a more detailed account of the second campaign. Verse 44. The departure of Antichrist from Israel to secure his kingdom following the 5th bowl judgment. Verse 45. The defeat of Antichrist at Armageddon,